Hey guys, it's Aaron here. I did all those bowl predictions, and I was trying to think of something else to do. And I always kind of like looking over the season as a whole, so I thought I would do a recap of every team that played in Division One football this year. Thought it'd be something interesting to do. I figured I would go conference to conference, kind of go alphabetical for each conference, so starting with the higher and go with the lower. That way, it's not biased by records. I don't do all the stacked teams at once or anything. I was thinking about putting out one a day. That gives me a long time over 4 months to make all these, so I'm just thinking it'd be something fun to do, keep me entertained for a while. Hopefully you guys like it, and I'm going to start these by doing the teams that aren't even technically in a conference, the FBS independent teams. I was looking at alphabetically, and that means I'm starting off with a prestigious team, albeit one that struggled this year, the Army Black Knights. These guys were in their fifth season under Rich Ellerson, a struggling coach. They really didn't have too high of expectations coming in, and they pretty much lived up to the expectations they had. They struggled this year. And this is a team, to recap, I'll just recap their season. They started off with an FCS opponent in Morgan State, team they were predicted to be and should have destroyed. They struggled a little bit, but still were able to play good enough. They won 28-12. Not like a huge win, but still a victory to get them started, something that team desperately needed. They just needed kind of some confidence after last year. After that, they came here to my school and played us at home. I go to Ball State. I was actually at this game. And much like when we played them in 2011 and even last year to an extent, their defense really struggled and their offense couldn't get it going as well as they were expected to. And Ball State beat them 40-14 at home. Really it was just a bad loss for them. And it didn't get any easier for them the next weekend. They went to back home to Army, at least at their home university at West Point. But they had to play fifth-ranked Stanford, and actually they didn't play too bad. They got beat. They got beat by a double possession score, like everybody thought they would at least get beat by. But it was only a 14-point loss to a really tough Cardinal team. While that's still a 34-20 loss, isn't great. That's kind of something to, I guess, think of as an improvement for them. Like that was one of their better games on the year, actually. The very next week, they had a home game against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, a team that struggled at times this year, but they were able to prevail in that game. Army still couldn't put up much of a fight. The Demon Deacons won 25-11. After that, one of the brighter points on Army's year, they played Louisiana Tech, a team that, albeit did struggle this year, but they had high expectations sort of this year after last year. They went 4-8 this year, but Army was able to beat them 35-16. A huge ground and pound game. The very next week, they played at Boston College against the Golden Eagles, very resurgent team with an amazing running back. Army just couldn't stop them. They gave up a bunch of points, and they got beat 48-27, 21-point loss. Really roughing for them. They kind of got lucky the next week by playing one of the worst teams in Division One football in Eastern Michigan. They beat them 50-25 handily. Gave them a little momentum, thought they were going to get on the right path, and that was after the midway point of the season, and that put them at 3-4, had them sort of hoping for bowl contention, but that's when the season really unraveled for them. They got beat at Temple 33-14, went to Air Force in their first military game and got beat 42-28. They lost a close one 21-17 to Petrino's Western Kentucky team. And then in a shootout at Hawaii, a long trip, playing another team that was struggling, they thought they had a shot at it, and they gave them a great game, but they got beat 49-42. So I left them at 3-8, not much left on the season, but they were still had one game left, and it was the big one that's put in its own week in terms of non-conference championship games. They played the Navy Midshipmen. For the classic military game. I've watched this every year since I was 4, and I did again this year. I'm always biased in it because my dad went to the Navy, so I was rooting for Navy, and much like many years past recently, I got to celebrate again because Navy beat them handily 34-7. So Army really struggled this year, enough that they actually fired their head coach, Ellerson. They've hired a new coach from Georgia Southern named Monken. I think it's probably a pretty good pickup for them. I mean, they just needed a change. But on the year, they didn't pass the ball at all. 77.6 yards a game, 123rd in the nation. It's about last, I think. Get us last. Their highest stat-wise quarterback on Santiago only had 93 attempts total, less than 100 total attempts. He only had 592 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. That was our leading quarterback. Meanwhile, running the ball with Baggett and Dixon, Baggett had 1,113 yards, 7.9 yards per carry for 8 touchdowns. Dixon had another 705, 6.4 per carry, and another 6 touchdowns. It's a team that ran the ball a lot, but they struggled to score while they ran. They only scored 24.4 points per game because their drives would often stall out when they were so dependent on the run. It was 94th in the nation. So despite running for 309.8 yards a game, third in the nation, they just weren't getting points, and their defense wasn't stopping very much either. They gave up 31.6 points a game, 92nd in the nation, and honestly, it was a little sad because their strength of schedule was not high at all. Outside of Stanford and Ball State, I think they played, let's see, it looks like one other team that made a bowl game all year. Their defense struggled. Their offense was too dependent on the run, even for a run-heavy team like them, and they just didn't have it this year. Albeit, that leaves them with a pretty low ceiling going into next year, new coach. I really think that this will be a little bit of a turnaround for them coming into next season. I don't think it's going to show on their record, though. But these videos aren't really about next season yet. I'm just kind of going over how last season went because I don't know a lot about next season. But there's a team that struggled, and they really have only they can really only go up from here. They can't do much worse by Army standards. So I wish them the best. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing a lot of these, and good luck to all Black Knight fans. Enjoy the off season, summer, and get ready for some more football next August and September, boys. Thanks.